Today we are going to be doing a lab called How to Stack Up. In front of you, you have instructions that look like this. I am just going to go over the instructions with you, and then you will be working with your partner to complete the lab. If you are listening to this online because you were absent or you needed to refresh yourself for the lesson, then you will be working alone, and everything that you need is online. So even if you lose something today in class today, then all of the material that you have in class for paper-wise is online. Of course, you would need your scissors and some colored pencils or crayons and some tape or some, well, tape would work better, not glue. But as far as the papers that I'm showing you here, they are all online for you to complete the lab if you lose anything or if you're listening to this online. Now, according to the principle of superposition, superposition tells us what? Youngest above old. Always young above old. And it tells us that here. In undisturbed sequences of sedimentary rock, the oldest layers are on the bottom. What do we mean by undisturbed? Maya. Okay, no unconformities. Well, unconformities wouldn't make it change from the layers, the order of the layers, but we would have things like features, which would be some of you are not sure. I need you to be sure. If you don't know, get out your notes.
Tilting.
Get out your notes. Well, what are features? Folding is a feature. Is folding a feature? You guys agree with that?
Intrusion.
Folding is an event. What else is an event? Tilting is an event. Are those disturbances?
Yes.
Yes, those are disturbances. What are features? Fault. What's a fault?
Breaking earth crust.
When it breaks. What's an intrusion?
Molten rock from Earth's interior that freezes it.
I wanted your own words. What's an intrusion? When lava comes through the rocks and then does what? And it hardens, turns into a rock. And that's a feature. And those will change the order as far as bottom, the oldest being at the bottom and the youngest being at the top. Are features and events older or younger than the rock layers?
Younger.
Younger. Somebody raise your hand and tell me why. Sarah. Exactly. The rock layers had to be there for something to happen. All right, moving on. Geologists use this principle to determine the relative age of the rocks in small areas. Relative age, which means what? Older or younger. Those types of words. We do not include any absolute information. All right. In this activity, you will play the role of a paleontologist/geologist, modeling what they do by drawing sections of different rock stratigraphic pieces, also known here as outcrops. Raise your hand, how do scientists get stratigraphic rock layers? Maya. How do they get those?
Like some geologists from one section take like layers of the ground and then
One section of where?
of like the different layers, like they dig and
Of where?
different parts of the world.
Different parts of the world.
Like
Good.
another geologist from another part of the world takes theirs and then another part, and then they all put them together and they try to figure out which ones.
Okay, so just so that everyone hears what she said, a paleontologist from one part of the world or the earth gets rock layers from that part. Another paleontologist from another part of the world gets rock layers from that part. And then a bunch of them do the same thing, and they come together. They may not come together in a physical setting, but they put stuff online, they put stuff in a website, and they compare those, and they put them all together so that they can do what? They're seeing if the layers go across the board, and then they're also looking to do what? What's their final thing they're trying to do? Come up with a column. What is that column called?
Stratigraphic.
Starts with the G.
Geograph. Geology.
Say it louder here. A geologic column. They're trying to figure out the layers of the entire Earth so that they can do what? Find out the oldest rock layer, but what's their final thing they're trying to do? Find the age of what? Find the age of the Earth. So they're going to come up with one big column. They're going to take those little columns and stack them together to come up with one big column. They do not just put them on top of one another. They have to combine them to make sure that they match the rock layers. All right. So that's said here, you're going to create a geologic column showing the history of the area of the outcrops. Your objective is to make a geologic column. You're going to interpret geologic history represented by your column that you have made. All of your materials that you have here. You have white paper with drawn boxes or stratigraphic pieces on there. Everyone has that, correct?
Yes.
Hold it up to make sure you know what I'm talking about. Good. And those stratigraphic pieces not only show us information about the outcrops, they show us the fossils that are there, they show us what the rock layer looks like, and they also show us on unconformities, which we're going to talk about here in just a moment. You have pencil, you have color pencils, you have crayons. I wouldn't use markers because they kind of bleed through, so try to use color pencils or crayons. You have scissors, and then you have tape. Your procedures, I'm going to run through this just a little bit, not all of it, because I'm going to show you a little bit of an example, and then I'm going to let you all go on your own. You have a color copy that looks like this. You also have a black and white copy. The black and white copy is for you to take home because you are going to, in class, be able to finish your color geologic column so that you can use that information to take it home and finish your work. However, if you do not finish it in here, then what are you going to do? You have to look on the website so that you can look at the color copy, but you should finish that in class. Your black and white copy is so that you have the instructions, so it tells you what you did, and so that you can see the naming of this, as well as the lines where there's unconformities and things of that nature on this colored copy. But you will not need the color information here because you will have your colored geologic column. Any questions for that? The way that you're going to do your colored geologic column is following the procedures. You're going to be able to color in with your colored pencils the copies of the illustration of the outcrop exactly like this. Now, if you notice here, there are some colors that you may not have. For instance, let's say you don't, this is yellow here, right? Make sure you color everything that looks like that the same. So that one in outcrop is going to be yellow. That one's going to be yellow. Now, let's say, for instance, this looks yellow, right? Kind of looks yellow. Let's say you don't have a olive color and you choose to use, I don't know, give me a color. Let's say brown, because it's already on here. You use brown. If you color this brown, then make sure you color that brown. So even though it says exactly, it just means that you have to make sure you coincide the ones that look the same. Also want to make sure you pay particular attention to these two. Is that the same?
No.
No, those are two different colors. So please make sure you color them differently. However, I want to make sure you understand that these two are the same, and I don't think. No, they're not. I'm sorry. Let me clarify that. These are not the same. They have the same fossils, but they're not the same. This one is the same as that one. So when you're coloring these two here, they're a similar green, but they're not the same green. So please make sure you change the coloring of that. Any questions about that? Okay. So that's following that part as far as coloring them. You do not need to copy the labeling there. It tells you that information is to help you with the analysis questions, which is why you have the black and white copy. You want to pay close attention, if you look at number 2, to the contact between the layers, if they're straight or they're wavy. A straight line equals bedding plane where deposition was continuous. There was no interruption in the rock layer being put down. If it's a wavy line, for instance, this one here, that tells us that there is an unconformity where rock layer was missing. How does rock layer become missing? Erosion or ice age, which means that what happened or what didn't happen? No rock layers were put there. Very good. The top of each outcrop is incomplete, I'm sorry. So it should be a jagged edge, and that's talking about up here. That's not unconformities. It just is telling us that we don't have all of the information. This is just a representative of what we do have. So assume that the bottom, lowest layer is the bottom of the plane. Everyone got that?
Yes.
Number 3 is optional depending on how dark you color. If you are going to be a very dark color, then you want to go over your fossils in dark black so that you can see them after coloring them, okay? All right, good. Pay attention to the shapes of the fossils of the layers that they're in, and then you're going to carefully cut out the crops of the paper and lay them in individual crops next to each other on your desk. I'm going to go over that. If you flip this paper over, the one with your copies that look like this, so that's one second. I'm trying to get to the. Oh, I didn't. Okay, you know what? I didn't print it. That's the black and white copy that looks like this. If you flip it over, you'll notice there are numbers on the back. So when you cut them out, you know which outcrop they belong to. For those of you who are watching online, you just have a number 1, 2, 3, and 4. You're going to need to number the back of them so you don't get confused when you cut them out. So you're going to carefully cut them out and you're going to move them around so that they match. If unconformities or wavy lines appear in any outcrop, there must be a missing rock layer, and you need to examine other sections to see how other areas fit. Eventually, if we look at number 7, you should be able to make a geologic column that represents all 4 outcrops and will show rock types and fossils for all of the known areas and layers. You're going to cross this out because you don't need to do this. Number 8, you can cross out on your black and white sheet of paper. Number 9, you're going to tape your geologic column together and since tape your together, created the geologic column, created from your outcrops to the front of your lab sheet. And I'm going to show you where I put that on there. And then you're going to use that to answer your questions. So on your black and white lab sheet, do you see this here? Once you finish your geologic column, you're going to tape it down on there. And then that will allow you to and help you to answer these questions along with looking at the unfinished ones because it will ask you information looking there. All right, so how are we doing the lab? Once you're finished coloring them and cutting them out, you're going to have 4 pieces that look like this. Everyone with me? That's the easy part. That's the second grade part, coloring and cutting it out. Then it tells you that you're going to need to cut along the wavy lines. You're not cutting along the straight lines because why?
Because that's the bottom of the plane.
Those are what?
The bottom of the plane.
Those, not just, this is the bottom of the plane here. But you're not going to cut along these lines. Why? Because there's no rock layer missing. That shows us that that was continuous. But we are going to cut along the wavy lines because that tells us what? Something was missing there. All right. So once you cut along them, your outcrop 1, you're cutting the wavy lines. Okay? Outcrop 2, you're going to cut the wavy lines so that they're separated. And that's why I number them on the back so you don't get them confused. Outcrop 3 has 2 parts of the wavy lines, which is unconformity, and outcrop 4 has none. Okay? And see how this one here was a bright turquoise, but I decided to color it in maybe a bright, bright, bright pink, just to differentiate it from the other greenish turquoise ones. If you want to do that, that is perfectly fine as well, so that you're not confused on the layers. Now, your instructions then tell you to layer them together. So I'm going to just give you an example of how to do that. Remember in our lesson, we took those 3 stratigraphic pieces and we tried to put them together and see how they match across the line?
Yes.
Do you remember that? So what you're going to do is you're going to take your different outcrops and see how they match according to one another. So let's take a look here. You can start with outcrop 1, you can start with 2, 3, or 4. You don't have to start with 1 if you don't need to, because that doesn't necessarily mean that was the first one. So you can take this and you would say, okay, does that match?
Yes.
Yes, it does match across the board, so that's cool. Does this match? Yeah? So what actually was missing here? Some more of the pink. That must have been what then? Erosion. Okay, good. And then you would go here and you would say, is there anything that matches here? No. Okay, so we got to kind of stay away from that for just a second. So then you would look at the other ones and you would say, okay, is there anything that matches here? Where does it match? It matches there. So far, so good, right? Okay. Does this one match anywhere?
Below it.
Okay. So what's missing here? Part of what color? The yellow.
Yellow.
What about outcrop 1? Where does it go? This one?
The one with the squiggles
The one in the
goes
left
the one by the
corner.
fuchsia one.
Squiggle?
Well, yeah, that one, it goes down. Like, the other one.
The one on the top.
What is the other one? This one is outcrop 1. This one's 2. This one's 3.
The one on the top.
Yeah, but
one
the
on the
top
top
part
of
of the
the outcrop
outcrop.
one.
Oh, good. Where?
Down
By the
below it.
fuchsia one.
Below.
Oh.
This one goes over here?
No, that.
You keep saying that. Someone come up and say, because you're saying that, and I don't know what
top
that
part of-
is.
Right here. This one, right there. Right there.
Oh, okay. So you're saying this one goes here. Now what?
The outcrop one, the one of your favorite goes like.
Where does this one go? This one goes here?
Yeah, but you have to bring the other ones down.
We have to bring the other ones down. Good, I'm glad that you're seeing this. Does everyone see that? Yes? So therefore, you're then going to have to layer them. We put them side by side, but then we're going to have to layer them. So you would layer them, that would tape there, that would tape there. But we noticed before we layer that, what was this area missing? This pink one was missing, okay? So we layer it. And you end up with your geologic column. That would look like that after you've taped it. Any questions? Okay. You may go ahead and get started with your partners. What you do not finish is what? Homework. Listen up. Listen up. This paper that you see that looks like this is your black and white sheet with your questions on one side, your instructions on the other. That is what you're going to write on for homework. Your glassine copy, which is the color copy, You're going to leave that here and put it in the basket, but this is also located where if you need to see it, on the website. All right, get to work with your partner. It is a lab, so it does count twice.